Please welcome Stewart Title's National Sales Manager, Mick Goodenough. As you know, sales professionals must keep learning. The Sales Professor is in. Here's Sales Minutes with Mick.
And welcome, Professor. How are you today?
Doing great, Bill. It's always great to be with you.
And I always love that theme music. It puts me in the mood to learn even more about sales because it is an ongoing, we never know enough, and it's just great to always learn, right?
It's always great to learn, and that music benefits me because I'm the only one in my entire family that has his own jingle.
And I'm sure you remind them of that every now and then, right?
Every now and then. That's right.
Especially when they listen. In the meantime, Mick, as always, every time we do a segment, you bring something forth that's interesting, applies to sales, not just in the real estate profession, but all kinds of sales. What have you brought for us today?
Well, it's talking about The Road Taken, the famous poem, The Road Less Taken. This is about the road taken, and it's about the choices we make in life, especially revolving around sales. As you know, I'm a passionate supporter of sales and salespeople. It's been my career my entire life, and I love professional sales. And so just recently, I took a different position with our company where I'm a regional sales director now for Texas and Oklahoma, excluding the Houston metro area. And part of that decision was I wanted to be much closer to the people, the salespeople, the escrow officers, the work being done every day, which is really where my passion lies. And so that's really what we're talking about. The first point I want to make is about finding your place in the world and finding your passion. And this was really something that I just went through. And so it was really about what drives you, what gets you up out of bed and excites you every day. And knowing full well some days are tougher than others, some days are a grind, but really at the end of the week, at the end of the month, what are you doing that really boosts your spirits?
There's no doubt about it. And I encourage people all the time. In fact, in my own life, I probably didn't adhere to the principle of find your passion soon enough, but now that I have, I'm really excited about it. And I encourage my son, I encourage anybody, do what you love what you do, and find out what that is. And sometimes people say, well, I have a passion, and I reference a session where I saw John Maxwell where he talks about himself. Some people say, hey, I love to sing. Well, that's great if that's your passion, but passion has to be matched up with what your strengths are as well. So if you love to sing and you're not a good singer, that may not be the path that you should take.
It's a great point, and there are many things in life that make us happy or that we're passionate about. But it really comes to the next point is I read this great thing. This the greatest question ever is what's the meaning of life? And it's a pretty heavy question. It doesn't sound like something that we would talk about on the Sales Professor segment. But I read a great version of this, and the meaning of one of the definitions of the meaning of life is to be useful. In other words, to have a useful, meaningful life. You're contributing something to society. You're contributing something in your job, to your customers, all of that. And I just thought that was a very simple, down-to-earth way to define it. And I think that's really interesting. Contributing something of meaning to the world, to society, to the work, the environment that you work in, the business you're in. I think that's really something that's very, very important. And all kinds of jobs have meaning. Everything that people do and do with the goal of getting it done well is worthwhile in my book.
That's right. And focusing on what we do and enjoying what we do, of course, we have our responsibilities. A lot of time, I know in my life, I was working at a job that I may not have enjoyed to the utmost, but I was at least enjoying that it was putting bread on the table and it was getting me to that next thing. So I would tell people if they're not really doing what they love right now and they're in a position, they can work towards that. But really the trick is to find out and identify what is it that we love to do and what we're designed to do in terms of strengths and abilities.
There's no doubt. And in my own life, I was a musician for many, many years, and with the idea of getting the record deal, that whole bit. And I worked many jobs to support that because, quite frankly, trying to be a musician in that way pays exactly zero. You're basically, in many cases, paying someone to play a gig. So I was the same. I worked a number of jobs that, while I could never see myself as a career in it, I always wanted to apply myself and do well because someone hired me they're paying me money to do a job, and I wanted to do that job well. And having passion about a job is different than having passion about a place. There's a story. I had an escrow officer that worked for me that loved to go to Hawaii. Every year they vacationed in Hawaii. Loved it so much, they decided to move there. And what she discovered when she moved there is they bought a little business serving coffee outside of a Home Depot. And what she ended up having happen after a few months was she was living in Hawaii, but she was going every day to the Home Depot and selling coffee. So it wasn't the Hawaii that was the same Hawaii as she would go there and visit and vacation and enjoy herself. So there's a bunch of different things involved in defining what you do and where you do it. And so people can get a little caught up in the passion when you got to have some practicality and some pragmatism as well in what you do every day. And then the next big point is, how do you measure yourself every day? How do you measure the contribution you're making? And I came across this as well. And the statement is this: do you want to do your job the best you can? And many people say that this is the ultimate. I'm going to do this job the best I can. But there's a level slightly higher than that I think it bears thinking about. And is it, do you want to do the job the best it's ever been done? And that way you're really competing against what your own capabilities are. Are you pushing yourself forward and above those, and not looking at someone else's measurement and saying, I'm going to match that, because their measurement may not be high enough. It may be not nearly high enough of what you want to accomplish in life.
And that's right. I think you said on a previous segment, the goals and expectations we have of ourselves are sometimes way beyond those of our sales manager or whomever that we report to.
Yeah, and it came up in the context of people that I've managed. My favorite people that I worked with and that I managed were the ones who had far higher expectations than I ever would, because they pushed themselves, they drove themselves. Now, you have to manage those people a little differently, because you got to talk them off the ledge every once in a while when times get a little tough, but they are driven every morning to produce at a very high level, and it's their own performance that they're competing against. So I really appreciate that mindset very, very much.
And also, as we think about the real estate professionals that listen to the show, and of course the show is heard by real estate professionals, homeowners, and just people that want to hear a good radio show, is my belief. However, the real estate professionals, as they are out there, certainly in the Houston area, and I think there's, last count, I hear about 30,000 people have their license here in the Houston area, whatever their earning level or even job satisfaction level, it is all across the board. There are people here in Houston making incredible amounts of money in the residential real estate world. And it's just fascinating, but everything in between in that sales world.
There's no doubt. And as I've said before on the many of the shows that I've been on, Bill, my mother was a real estate agent for 31 years. So I saw it. I lived it vicariously through her every single day. She loved it very much. She was a reasonably high producer. She wasn't ever the top producer in her offices, but she did very, very well. She produced at the level that made her happy, that got her what she wanted out of life. And I think that's an important thing as well. You know, like you said, there's all levels of producer, everywhere from a licensed realtor who does 0 all the way to a licensed realtor who does 100, 200 deals a year. And, in the title business, it's our job to make sure every one of those transactions that come to us go smoothly and well. And so we measure ourselves that way as well. The other thing, though, is when you see highly successful people and they're talking to people who are still building on their success, you hear sometimes, wow, it's been very lucky for you. The market's been very lucky for you. I hear this thing about luck, and this is a big point I like to make, and I love this, and people have probably heard this before, is the definition of luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And so if you're constantly preparing for the next opportunity, you're preparing yourself, your mind, your body, you're taking training, you're constantly learning, exposing yourself to new things, knowledge, you can always be ready for that opportunity, where some people point to that and say that was lucky that came up. It's not luck at all. It is you're ready for that door to open and you're ready to walk through it. And that's a really important thing as well.
And that's right. As you brought up the music example, myself, I'm a musician, but you hear very successful people, the Beatles, any kind of musical artist or personality, we hear about them when they become successful, but there are most of the time many, many, many years and hours of playing for 5 people, for 2 people, for 100, where they don't all of a sudden become successful.
No, they don't. And it's a great point you make, Bill, in that, a lot of people, you should always be open to taking training. You should always be open to learning new things, but you also have to practice. You can't just go to a seminar, and there's a lot of great real estate sales trainers out there. You name it, Brian Buffini, Mike Ferry, Tom Ferry, brilliant guys. But they always, you should take what they teach you and practice it. And this is where people tend to not really go where they can, as they don't practice. But back to the music thing, we would play typically for an hour because we wrote all our own songs. but we would practice. For every hour we played live, we'd practice between 100 and 200 hours for every hour we played live. And that is something that it's amazing when you think about that. Can you imagine that you practiced a sales pitch 100 times for every one you made it? Your sales pitches would be very, very good.
Yeah, we're going to get pretty good, right?
They think so. I mean, it's going to sound natural too, because sales pitches at the beginning, when you're learning scripted language and it's not your own voice yet, they can sound very stilted. But you do it enough times and you make it where you believe what you're saying, because it is good information, it is good language. It will sound like your voice ultimately. Daryl Turner, one of my mentors, says it goes from your head to your heart, then it sounds like you.
No doubt about it. And quite frankly, when we think about the real estate professionals all over, but here in Houston, a lot of them in their training use certain scripts, right?
They should, because quite frankly, these people, these trainers have worked through not only their own experience, but dozens, if not hundreds of realtors who've brought them good tools, and they modify it. They do the things that are going to make it work. So it's a really good thing.
No doubt about it. Now, let's go back to another thing as we talk about the road taken. First of all, sometimes, as you brought up the music example, sometimes we have to change the road. We might start down one road, but sometimes we take a different road, right?
Absolutely. It's absolutely the case. And again, that's why the preparation, if there's an opportunity that comes up that you believe is what is a great fit for you, you have to be ready to take it. And it could be very different from what you're doing. But you should always be in touch with what your passion is. And again, your passion is different necessarily from some of the things you love to do for recreation or for spare time, or to that things that you enjoy. You still have to have that purpose, that usefulness in life, in my opinion, so that you can feel like you're a contributing member of society, a positive contributor, because we've seen enough negative contributions in the world in the last few months, certainly, and we want positive contributions to the world.
And also, share with us, if you would, Mick, when someone has to choose between one road or another, what are some of the things or core principles that you use yourself that have worked in making big decisions like that, should someone be in that position?
You believe in what that job entails. You believe in the meaning of that job or the product that you're selling. You believe in the industry. You deeply believe that it's a necessary thing that people are going to benefit from. The outcome for others is the successful outcome for others is a successful outcome for you. And that's really a variation of Zig Ziglar saying, you can get whatever you want out of life. You help enough other people get what they want out of life. And it's a great phrase. And that's really a variation on that, is someone else's successful outcome. If it's influenced by you, that's successful for you as well as an outcome.
No doubt about it. Mick, before we end the segment, what else should we know?
You should know that one of the most important things is to have what I call a servant mentality. And I don't mean a servant in the negative sense. I mean in a positive sense. You're serving your greater good. You're serving your industry, your community. And this is a great thing. There's a great book called The Go-Giver by Bob Berg that talks about this. You need to give without any expectation of receiving. And you also need to open yourself up to receiving when someone else wants to give to you. And it really elevates the interactions between people and the relationships between people.
Very nice. And Mick, if someone wants to reach out to you?
Goodenough, MGOODENO at Stewart.com. Happy to return any emails coming my way.
Our sales professor, Mick Goodenough. Thank you, Mick.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Bill.
And we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned.